Hi guys, this is Mattiace, and today's video is going to be, in my opinion, a very important video about a very serious thing that is and has been unfolding in Sweden over some time, and that is the Quran burnings that has been happening, especially outside of the embassies of a number of Muslim countries. So there is a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and information that is deliberately used as smokes and mirror arguments, information that may be somewhat correct but irrelevant, and that is being blown up out of proportions in order to hide relevant facts. So I want to focus on relevant fact here. I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty details of facts, but I'm gonna focus on relevance, because that is something that is severely missing in all these discussions that I see on the news and on Twitter, and especially if you look at the different narratives in different countries, and which puts Sweden in a really bad spot over the fact that Sweden has done nothing but try to help refugees. Understand this. Everything that you see about these Quran burnings goes back to the fact that Sweden has opened up its borders, paid billions and billions of dollars to so-called refugees, which, maybe 2 or 3% of these so-called refugees are actually refugees, but the vast majority, well over 95% of them, has been proven not to qualify for asylum status. That being said, the very conflicts, the very wars, and the very hate and intolerance in these countries where these people come from has been brought to Sweden now, and it's an ongoing their conflicts from their countries are ongoing in Sweden. It's not only about the Quran. We have the same with, if it's, I don't know, a much bigger scale actually, but didn't get that much international attention, was the conflict between, I think, Ethiopia or Eritrea or something. I don't even know, but there was a massive big riots. There's been massive big riots between the people that support the regime and the people that are against the regime. And this is like a war from Africa, basically, that is spilling over now to several Swedish locations. And to keep this, to start off with one very important fact here, is that one of these Quran burners, his name is Salvan Momika. He's on this face of the Swedish flag, which is, he is from Iraq. He came to Sweden as a refugee, and he's now painted as Swedish, and his actions are now is now reflecting poorly or badly on Swedish, as if Swedish is a hateful country, when in fact this guy I'm Swedish. I am Swedish. My family were born and raised in Sweden. My parents, my grandparents were all Swedish. And I can barely pronounce this guy's name. Now, this man, I did some reading about this guy before. I honestly didn't know much about him, but apparently he has suffered a lot of the violence and the hate from ISIS in Iraq. He was on the opposite side of that war, and his hatefulness towards Islam is probably due to that conflict. And if there is other information, I don't have time to get into it here, because I want to focus on the Swedish factor in this particular video. And what's important to understand is that, he might have very legitimate reasons for hating on a religion or a certain group of this religion or whatever. He might have very legit reasons for his anger. He may have. I couldn't tell you. But to say that to make this into Sweden being hateful is very misleading, because yeah, he's no more Swedish than I am Iraq. Well, he's been granted asylum, so there is that. Now, The other man that is very controversial here, and I did some fact checking on this guy also. I did know a little bit more about this man though, Rasmus Paludan. He is actually half Swedish, but he and his family, as far as I can gather here, both he and his family they live in Denmark. I think he lives in Denmark, and he has a Danish party called Stram Kurs, which in English will be hard line. That's a terrible translation, but it doesn't matter. And yeah, he's Danish. So none of these two guys are actually Swedish. Where was that's the one. So none of these guys are actually Swedish. So why is it that Sweden grants the how do you say it? Why is it that Sweden gives its okay to burning the Quran? What is that about? Well, Sweden doesn't. It's a loophole in the law, and without getting too much into the nitty-gritty, nerdy, sweaty thing about Swedish law, which in most cases, when you talk about legislation in a country, you need to get the facts straight. You need to really understand the facts. But in this case, it is not, the specific fact is not that important when it comes to what this is about. And the fact is that in Sweden, we have the right to gather and to demonstrate. This is a civil right we have, or this is a democratic right we have. We have the right to protest. We have the right to make a gathering and protest as long as we do not break the law. Here is where the loophole comes in. There is no law in Sweden that prohibits you from burning any book. It doesn't matter what book it is. And since the Quran is a book, it falls under that legislation. There is nothing that prevents you, legislation-wise, there's nothing that prevents you from burning the Bible, burning the Torah, or, there's been a lot of books that has been brought up as examples when people explain the law regarding burning books. People bring up children's stories like Pippi Långstrump and stuff like that. I think Jimmy Åkesson used as an example. It doesn't matter. It is not illegal to burn any book in Sweden. And the thing about the funny, I'm about to use the word funny, that's not the right word. The ironic thing about this is that when Muslims now get upset about this, they talk about burning the Torah and burn the Bible. It's like, yeah, well, go ahead, do it. I don't care. I don't think anybody. I guess Jews and Christians will care, but I don't think they will in any way react violently. And if they do, we will call them out for it. You are allowed to burn the Bible. It's just that when Muslims realize that nobody is going to react with the same violence and the same hate if you burn the Bible or the Torah, then they don't really care about burning the Bible or the Torah, it seems. Well, maybe they will. We'll see about that. But you have the legal right to do so. So, the police cannot deny people from gathering, and they cannot deny them from burning a book. They cannot deny them from burning this book, even if it's the Quran, because they have to follow the Swedish law. What you need to understand about this is that Sweden is a secular country. Swedish law is based on all people's equal rights. All people's equal rights. This is in vast contrast to religion, where you see I used to bring up that thou shalt have no gods but me, no other gods but me, from the Bible, for example. Well, that is a direct quote. This direct quote goes directly against freedom of religion. We always bring up freedom of religion when we defend religions that are against freedom of religion. I mean, the hypocrisy couldn't be any more clear. And if you look at religious scripture, you see a lot of we are God's chosen people. Well, that's against human rights. If we in Sweden says that all people should be treated equal, one group of people are not above or below another group of people. That would be against the law. But religious scripture has this demed status, and you have in religious scriptures you have laws about regarding slavery. That is completely forbidden in Sweden. But in religious scripture, it's right there, comes from Moses, I believe, and it's been put into all these other scriptures later on in the New Testament and Hadith and Quran and whatnot. But that is against Swedish law. Now, you even have the right to burn the book that is the Swedish law. You can bring the law book, however you translate that, the book that holds the Swedish law, and you can burn that. That's not illegal. Now, another thing that is extremely important to point out about this is that in many cases, like these two people, up until this point, I've only pointed out Salwan Momika, and Rasmus Paludan, but they are of course part of. I did a little bit of research here. I don't trust Google, so I use both Google and this DuckDuckGo because I want to have the information from different sources. But we'll get to this guy soon. But what's important to point out is that this has also been timed at a time when there is a lot of big geopolitical disasters happening around the world and in the nearby vicinity of Sweden, which is the war in Ukraine. This is actually correlated in a very, very clear and strong way, but a lot of people miss it. You see, during these Quran burnings, they have also deliberately provoked Turkey, which is a Muslim country, and they have been doing this. I found this. There's been a lot of this where they want to hang a puppet or a doll of Erdogan, the president of Turkey. The reason why they do that, and they do this in the context of burning the Quran, that they're commingling this, and they do this because there are a lot of strong geopolitical powers that are against Sweden joining NATO due to the war in Ukraine. This goes together, and I've actually made a video about this not long ago when about Erdogan's demands to let Sweden into NATO. They're using the Quran burnings as a way of provoking especially Turkey, because they want Turkey to block Sweden from joining NATO. This is important. Now, I'm not denying that this guy, Salwan, right, why am I even trying? That this guy has other motives behind him than NATO. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy doesn't care at all. He's completely sees NATO as irrelevant. He probably has his own motive, which is his hatefulness versus Islam. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But these guys are backed up by financiers, and they have their communities, and they need money, they need support in order to do this, in order to continue with their lives. They need some kind of protection and whatever. And there are forces in the world that really want to prevent Sweden from joining NATO. And of course, they could also provoke Hungary. Hungary was also trying to block Sweden from joining NATO. There was some stuff there. I don't even know what it was. But provoking Hungary this way, they would just laugh it off. Nobody, they wouldn't care. Provoke whatever the leader of Hungary is. It wouldn't matter. They wouldn't behave that way. But they know that Muslims react much more, well, in this case, very uncivilized because of this. Muslims react much more to the burning of the Quran than anybody else would react to any kind of insults, and they abuse this. This has happened during the time that Sweden wanted to join or did join NATO, and then it's just been going on and on and on and on, and then it was like a train that couldn't stop, right? So it's important to point out that this is not hatefulness from Sweden. I mean, what's happened to Sweden is that the conflicts in other nations has been brought to Sweden, and these conflicts are just ongoing here now. And one of the ways that this was motivated, this is what Sweden stands for and has stood for many years. You have the actual Google translation here. I found this quote. It took me a while to find this actually. This is from Moderaterna. This is the former Swedish Prime Minister Fredrik Reinfeldt, and he says this: "Öppna era hjärtan." Let me see. I'll let you hear it actually.
För att se människor i stark stress med hot mot det egna livet som flyr mot prövning. Vi har nu människor som flyr i antal som liknar det vi hade under Balkankrisen i början av 1990-talet.
He's talking about the Balkan War,
Nu vädjar till svenska folket om tålamod.
He's not praying, he's begging to the Swedish population for patience.
Om att öppna era hjärtan.
And here comes, öppna era hjärtan. This was a massive slogan from the Moderaterna. They actually have power again now with another prime minister. Open up your hearts. That's what this means. Open up your hearts to welcome all these people from Iraq, Syria, but that's what it was about this time. Before it was ex-Yugoslavia. We brought in like hundreds of thousands of Muslims from ex-Yugoslavia, from Bosnia, or I don't remember. And on top of that, we have people from, I don't even know, like North Africa, Afghanistan, Pakistan, all these other nations. And we have brought in almost exclusively, not exclusively, but almost exclusively Muslims from the Middle East and North Africa, with, among other things, one of the strongest motivation, one of the strongest slogans was öppna era hjärtan. Open up your hearts. It's about being kind, being welcoming, helping people, giving asylum to people in need, people that have had their lives devastated by war, persecution, hate and violence. And we welcome them to Sweden to give them asylum. We pay for their houses, we pay for their food, we pay for their education, and we try to assimilate them into our society where they can live in peace, prosperity. And Sweden has for a long time tried to be this beacon of light, showing off to the world that we can live in multiculturalism and we can all get along and we can all live together in prosperity and democracy, and we can all accept each other's despite different religions and different ideology. And well, I am one of those people that have firsthand seen how this has changed Sweden, because I have lived in those areas where this has had the biggest changes. I've seen Sweden go from one of the safest countries in the world to now being one of those countries where there rape, robbery, assault, shooting, stabbing, burning. It's just another day in Sweden now. It's every day in Sweden. You like today we almost never hear about rape, robbery or assault anymore, because there is so much shootings and murder that those crimes, the murders and the shootings, those even worse crimes, they take up all the headlines. So if somebody gets, like 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about the gang rape that we never seen in Sweden before mass immigration. And that is still happening in Sweden. It's just that they don't get any headlines anymore because the murders take up all the headlines. It's unbelievable what's happened in Sweden. And of course, no matter what happens, they always find a way to blame Sweden for the violence, the crime, the hatefulness that has been brought into Sweden by, among others, this man, Fredrik Reinfeldt. He's not the only one, but he has a very clear slogan. Actually, the other political party, Socialdemokraterna, is even more responsible because they have been in power for a longer period of time. So, what we now see is a lot of hate and threats and higher terrorist preparations in Sweden due to Sweden getting accused of things that is done by a man from Iraq and a man from Denmark. Now, there's a lot more to this story, and if you think I got something wrong, let me know in the comment section. If you think that I missed out on something, which there is a lot that I did miss out on, share it in the comment section. This was a one take. I will not edit any of this footage. I'm just gonna share it right as I recorded it. And yeah, thank you for watching.